Okay, so today we're going to be doing the biology online quiz for chapter 1 for the finals. So, what are some functions of vacuoles? Vacuoles generally store things that aren't being used by the cell at the moment, or cannot be used by the cell at the moment. So, they store water, food, wastes, or other materials. They store products that are synthesized in the cell and cannot be shipped out right away, and they store wastes that cannot be eliminated directly. What are two functions of the cell membrane? The cell membrane is a selectively permeable substance, which means that it picks what goes in and out of the cell based off of what the cell needs. For example, if it needs more water, then it will allow more water to go into the cell. If it needs less water, it will let more water go out of the cell. And other than that, it also holds the cell together, making sure that it doesn't mix with its exterior. Next question. Which of the following structures are present in plant cells but absent in animal cells? One way to memorize this is to check the chart that they made in ebooks, which basically just says that chloroplasts, cell walls, and starch granules are absent in animal cells yet present in plant cells. And then everything else except for lysosomes are in plant cells and animal cells. And then lysosomes are only in animal cells. So the diagram shows a transverse section through a blood capillary. The measured length of the scale is 35 millimeters. What is the magnification of this drawing? Okay. So to find the magnification, you have to do the size of image divided by the actual size. Sorry for the bad drawing, but yeah. So in this case, it would be 35 millimeters divided by 7 micrometers. So the first thing you have to do is make sure that they're in the same unit. So here, sorry, I was doing something. 1 micrometer is 0.001 millimeters. So in other words, how many micrometers you have divided by 1000 is equals to the millimeter. So you just divide it. So you take the one with that's in micrometers and then divide this by 100 to get the millimeters. So here we would I would change the micrometers into milliliters, but you can change the millimeters into micrometers. So because you have to divide the micrometers to get by 1000 to get the millimeters, you would have to multiply the millimeters by 1000. So which is what I'm going to do here. So 35 times 1000 will give us 35 milliliters in micrometers. So that would be 35,000. So to do the size of image divided by the actual size would be the 35,000 divided by 7. So 35,000 divided by 7, 5,000. There you go. 5,000 is the magnification. Okay. The electron micrograph shows a cell. The measured length of the nucleus is 34.2 millimeters. what is the actual diameter of the nucleus? So to find to find the actual diameter or the actual size of the specimen, you do the observed length divided by the magnification used. So observed length would be, the measured length would be 34.2 divided by the magnification, so 5,700, and they want it in micrometers, so you have to change the millimeters into micrometers before doing the calculations. I'm not sure if you have to, but that's what I do. So you do 34.2 times 1,000 to get it into micrometers. So you'd get 34,200. So you would do 34,200 divided by the magnification, which is 5,700. So here, 4200 divided by 5700. So you will get 6, and the answer is 6. Now, choose the correct answer to specify whether each of the following cells has a cell wall or not. Cell type, bacteria. Okay, so what I would do to try to memorize this is that basically animal cells and human cells don't have cell walls, but basically every other organism does. So that includes plants, fungi and bacteria. So bacterial cells, fungus cells or fungi cells, and plant root cells or any plant cell have cell walls. But human cheek cell does not have a cell wall because human cells don't have cell walls, and neither do animal cells, but that's a different topic. So the following diagram represents a plant cell. Choose the correct answer to each of the following questions. Okay. Which structure contains the chromosomes? Generally, the nucleus contains the chromosomes. The nucleus always has the chromosomes. And here you have to memorize what each one is, like what each part of the cell is. And here C would be the nucleus, A would be the chloroplast, and B would be the vacuole. So another way of seeing this, it seems a little complicated, I would say, but generally you should know where all of these things are, except for this, and this. We don't study those yet. Personally, never heard of them. But anyway, so everything else you should know what they are and who and where they are, and you should naturally know their function, but it's not too hard to know. Next, which structure contains the cell sap? The vacuole in a plant cell always contains the sap, and the vacuole is generally the largest one, or the one that takes the most amount of that takes up the most amount of space, because it contains it stores all of the things that the plant needs to have inside of it. So sap, food, water. So yeah. Which structure contains pigments that serve as centers of metabolic activities? Chloroplasts are the, thing in the plant cells that contains pigments, and they also are the sources, or like the chloroplast is the source of the metabolic reactions. And by source, I mean place where it happens. Choose whether the following statements are true or false. Animal cells, fungi, and most bacteria have a cell wall. False, because animal cells do not have a cell wall. The cell wall is thick and tough. True. Like the cell membrane, the cell wall is fully permeable. False, because although the cell wall is fully permeable, the cell membrane is not. The cell membrane is selectively permeable. The cell wall protects a cell and provides it with extra support. True, because that's its function. Here, mitochondria have internal membranes that serve as their working surfaces. These membranes are folded, thereby increasing the surface area available for chemical reactions. So basically, this just means that their membranes, the mitochondria's membrane is folded so that the reaction works better because there's more area for the reaction to occur. Also, these mitochondrial membranes contain enzymes that control the process of aerobic respiration. Yes. The number of mitochondria in a cell varies greatly depending on the cell's demand for energy. Yes, because the more active, or actually let me just continue. The more active a cell is, the greater the number of mitochondria it has, because the more active it is, the more energy it needs. The more energy it needs, the more mitochondria it has, because the mitochondria is what makes energy for the cell, so that's its main function. Plant cells contain a central organelle that is large and contains the cell sap. It also helps maintain the shape of these cells. What organelle is it? The vacuole. Because vacuoles are the large central organelle that stores things in the plant cells. And it also helps keep its shape. So, choose the part of a plant cell described in each of the following cases. Releases energy from foods, mitochondria. Generally, when it has something to do with energy, you should probably first think of the mitochondria, because the mitochondria is where energy is released and created. Well, not created, but released and produced for the cell to use. Makes food for the plant by photosynthesis. Chloroplast is where the photosynthesis takes place, which is also why chloroplasts are absent in animal and human cells. Is a rigid and tough outer layer that protects the outside of the cell wall. And generally it's not the cell membrane, because the cell wall is tough and rigid while the cell membrane is not very tough and not very rigid either. I'm not sure how to describe it, but it's not very tough and it's not very hard, and its purpose isn't protecting the outside of the cell. The purpose is to keep the inside separated from the outside of the cell, and to choose what goes in and out of the cell to make sure that the cell has the nutrients and molecules that it needs, such as water and so on. Contains cell sap, vacuole. Stores the genetic information, nucleus. Controls what goes into and out of the plant cell membrane, and is the cell's main site of protein synthesis, ribosomes. So yeah, these are just general facts about each and every part of the cell. And to show you a photo of what that looks like, Oh, here would be for plants. Like I said before, for plants. Although this, and this we are not studying. But everything else we are, and this is a photo of what a plant cell looks like and all of its parts. And then this is an animal cell. Generally has the same, not the same, but it has a lot of things in common to the plant cells. But yeah, it's just a little different. And this we are not studying. So no. Okay, choose the correct answer. Okay, the cell membrane provides protection and support to the cell. It also controls the movement of substances into and out of the cell. So yeah, whenever they're asking for something that, or for what controls what goes in and out of the cell, it's always the cell membrane. The cell wall is a thick and tough outer layer found in plant cells, fungi, and most bacteria. It protects these cells and provides them with extra supports. That is the function of cell walls, and plant cells, fungi, and most bacteria have cell walls, so that's just a general fact. The endoplasmic reticulum synthesizes important biological molecules and transports them within the cell. The rough endoplasmic reticulum is mainly involved in protein synthesis, while the smooth endoplasmic reticulum... Okay, so for this question, just memorize, or you just have to know that the rough endoplasmic reticulum synthesizes proteins, and the smooth endoplasmic reticulum synthesizes lipids. So they synthesize different things, basically. Choose the correct answers to label the cell organelles. This is probably going to come in the exam. You have to know what each organelle and what each part of the cell is called and which one it is. So A would be the rough endoplasmic reticulum, which is attached to the outside of the nucleus. B is the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, which is not directly attached to the nucleus, but is floating around it, kind of, in the cytoplasm. C would be the Golgi apparatus. You have to memorize that. And you have to memorize all of these things, actually. But yeah. D is the vesicles. Don't know if I said that right, but the vesicles, the small things in the cell that store materials, and then they're like smaller version of vacuoles, except in plant cells they have the whole vacuole itself, but animal cells don't. And then E would be a mitochondrion. Yeah. F is the cell membrane. G is the lysosome, and H is the ribosomes. So yeah. One way to know is that H, or ribosomes, are the smallest organelles. Mitochondria, there's always a lot, and they're oval shaped. Golgi apparatus, I don't know how to explain that shape, but just memorize the shape, honestly. And then the small circles within the cell, sometimes in the membrane actually, like here you can see that it's inside of the membrane. Those are the vesicles, and then the big circle is the nucleus. And this is, of course, in animal cells. Plant cells look slightly different. Well, not slightly different, but they look different. Okay. Here, plant cell now. Okay. Choose the correct answers. Okay. A, smooth endoplasmic reticulum. I'm not going to lie. A kind of left me stumped a little bit, but Yes, generally. There's where the smooth endoplasmic reticulum should be. B is the rough endoplasmic reticulum. The way to memorize this is that the smooth endoplasmic reticulum is around the nucleus but not attached to it directly, and the rough endoplasmic reticulum is directly attached to the outside of the nucleus. And then C, Golgi apparatus. Yeah, that's what they look like that's what it looks like in the plant cell. D would be the chloroplasts. Yes, the chloroplast, the way I memorize what the chloroplast is that it's oval shaped and green and relatively pretty big considering how important it is for the plant cell. And E is the vacuole, the large center, which kind of looks like an empty pit, kind of, or like an empty pool, but it's empty so that it can like store sap and different materials that the cell needs. F would be the cell membrane. G is the mitochondrion. And H is the cell wall. This is generally something you need to memorize, and you need to know the plant and animal cells, how they work and how each part of it works and what is inside of it, what's absent, what's present, and where everything is, basically. So choose the correct answers to identify the type of cell described in each case. Presence of cell wall, prokaryotic cell. Right. A prokaryotic cell is a plant cell, so that's how I memorized it. A prokaryotic cell is a plant cell, therefore it has a cell wall. And then presence of membrane-bound organelles, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, are animal cells. Presence of large ribosomes, animal cells. So, yeah. Ribosomes are generally larger in animal cells than other cells, I guess. And then for the second one, membrane-bound organelles, mitochondria, and endoplasmic reticulum, animal cell. And then for the first one, memorize that prokaryotic cells don't generally have a lot of organelles. In fact, they don't have a lot of, there's a lot of organelles that they do not have. And I think earlier I said they're plant cells. I meant, sorry for that, but they make up different, groups of organisms, but mostly they are bacteria, so sorry. But yes, so basically prokaryotic cells are just cells that don't really have a lot of a lot of organelles, so they're missing a lot of organelles. And then there's also something called eukaryotic, it's the same thing. And those are the ones with the organelles, like animal and human cells. So yeah. Mitochondria produce energy from energy-rich molecules such as sugars through a process called cellular respiration. So the process that mitochondria goes through is called cellular respiration. That's something that we should know. And energy-rich molecules, in the book, the example that they gave us is sugars, so that's how I got the answer. But generally speaking, sugars are rich with energy, and it's just generally well known. Ribosomes are present in all cell types. They could be found floating freely in the cytoplasm or attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Ribosomes are involved in the synthesis of a biomolecule that is essential for the survival of living things. What is this biomolecule? the biomolecules that ribosomes synthesize are proteins, which is actually why the rough endoplasmic reticulum synthesizes proteins. It's because ribosomes are attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum, which is how it synthesizes protein.